Hey, everybody, it's Suki Jeffries with another episode of Defying Expectations Over 60. It's episode 13, and I hope that's not an unlucky number. I'm not very superstitious. I hope you aren't either. So, on Defying Expectations Over 60, we're a weekly live stream show. It's very short, 15 to 20 minutes, and we normally talk with and about amazing seniors, of which I am. I'll be 64 in April. Who are making a difference in the world when society expects them to be slowing down. I'm Suki Jeffries, best-selling author, behavioral superpowers coach, and retirement specialist. I help women at or nearing retirement age build a life on purpose of health, passion, joy, and money. So, welcome to the show. And today I'm especially pleased to welcome my friend Brian Manthey. He is actually not over 60, but he's actually 50 years old. I was telling him earlier, I vaguely remember that birthday. And he is here today because the subject matter that he's going to talk about is definitely over 60 and may be of interest to many of you and many of the men that you know, and women. Not as many women, but men. So Brian's here to talk about a book called Vietnam, Its Impact on My World, that his father wrote and Brian published this year. So Brian, I want to say hi to you. And is there anything else you want folks to know about you?
Thank you, Suki. I am married with children, and I have four children and a beautiful queen for a wife. And I am glad to be on your show, and I appreciate you letting me be on here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to have you. So Brian and I have been spending a lot of time together over the last 6 weeks or so. We're in a goal setting program that you may have heard me talk about together, and we're making amazing things happen. So I want to talk a little bit about the book. So I understand that your father wrote the book, but didn't get to publish it. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, my father back in the 90s started to go through PTSD counseling,
Hmm.
and my dad's a very artistic, visual person. And so he started writing down the memories that most affected him while he was in Vietnam back in 68 and 69, serving in the D-16 Armor 173rd Airborne Brigade. They called him the Herd. So he wrote those stories, and I used to talk to him about publishing these stories. And he would tell me that he didn't want to discuss the stories, he didn't want to relive it. He was writing it because he found that as he wrote the stories down, the memories of the stories faded. And so
Yeah.
it helped him a lot.
So it was kind of a catharsis for him. He just was writing them down just to get them out.
Exactly. Exactly. He was just trying to work his way through his
Hmm.
trauma.
Yes, great. And that's a long time to live with it. I mean, he was there 68 and 69, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a good 50 years before at least 50 years before he started writing them down. So a long
Yes,
time to live with PTSD.
definitely.
Yeah. So, your father, as I understand it, passed away in 2019, sorry, 18.
18.
I asked you that question a moment ago, and I've already forgotten it. That's what it's like being over 60. Get ready. So, what was your father's name?
My father's name was Stephen Manthey.
Uh-huh. And did he, what do you remember about him as a dad?
He was a great dad. He would take me hunting and hiking and spend time with me.
Mhm.
He especially was very much into, because of his trauma in Vietnam, he was very much into taking me out in the woods and teaching me how to hunt with archery and to eat different berries and that sort of stuff like that out in the woods
Oh,
for
that's
survival
cool.
purposes.
So there aren't a lot of woods here in Arizona. I know you live in Queen Creek, Arizona. Where did you grow up with him?
I grew up in the Seattle area up in Washington State.
Mm-hmm. Lots of woods
So,
there.
yes, lots of woods there.
That's cool. So, um, you said that he didn't want to publish it when he was alive. So tell me how and why the last 5 years you've gotten this book ready to go out.
So he didn't want to publish it because he didn't want to rediscuss the stories. And so since I published it, I have found from posting on different Vietnam sites on Facebook, his story is being talked about a lot. In fact, I've been reached out by quite a few people that knew him over there in Vietnam, and
Wow.
they add to the story. So from what I understand, from what I heard from a guy that served on the same armor personnel carrier as my dad, he said that when you start talking about the stories, it's from your point of view, then the other person adds into the story, and then the trauma of the story relives itself, which takes some months to even years to get re established out of their mind.
Oh gosh.
So he just did not want to live through that anymore. He was having a hard time going through PTSD counseling and having to relive stories, let alone to have to bring out the full story of even areas that he might have blanked out.
So some of these people who served with him, they are able to fill in some of the blanks of those stories and tell you more about your dad.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They they talked about what kind of a soldier he was, someone that they could always count on. It's been very I'd say exciting to
What a
hear the
gift.
stories,
Yeah.
hear how people how they admired him. One of his friends that he served with, he called my dad his battle brother. And
Mhm.
when my dad left out of Vietnam, he actually felt lost because he no longer had my dad on the other side of the 60 caliber.
Yeah,
So
wow. Yeah, it must be wonderful to hear about your dad as a very young man and the qualities that he displayed even back then.
it's absolutely amazing thinking what these 18, 19, and 20-year-old kids are having to do over there.
Mhm. Some of them
It's
as young
very
as Yeah, some of them as young as 16. I was when I was 15, they stopped the draft. So my friends were very close to being drafted. And they just I look back now at 16-year-olds. I mean, we thought we were tough stuff when we were 16, that you probably did too. And yet you look back now at 16 and it just seems like, we're sending babies to battle.
definitely babies going into battles. I look at my own son's 15 right now. I couldn't imagine him being drafted and sent over to a
Mhm.
foreign country to go fight.
Yeah, yeah, crazy, crazy. And your dad, yeah, and your dad not only did it, but he did it clearly with valor and honor because, these guys are writing you so many years later and telling you about him, before you were born, right? I mean, long
Definitely
before.
before I was born.
Yeah. What have you learned about him? What more have you learned about him that you didn't know?
So in his book, he's talking. He goes through many areas of his life. Sometimes he'll be talking about a battle in Vietnam, and then he'll flash back to when he was a child that he relates his survival to that situation to. In the first chapter, he talks about pulling his M6. He was a driver, and he pulled his M16 up on a Vietnamese Viet Cong soldier. And then he flashes back to pheasant hunting with his dad and having what's called buck fever, where you pull the gun up and you fire before you aim and you do all that. And his dad worked with them and worked with them. And so when he was in Vietnam, he was in a similar situation and he was able to just pull up and smooth. And then he came home. So
Mhm.
the whole book is pretty close to that.
Mhm.
It's him journey taking a journey to try to understand how 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day of his life impacted him so much.
Yeah,
So many stories.
that is an amazing period of time when you think about it. 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day. So that's 360, 390, like 390 something days, right? 396, 97. That's not a lot of days to have, your whole life be changed. I don't know there's anything that you and I go through. Well, you were in the Navy, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Was there anything similar that you went through that you can relate to?
Not to somebody who went through combat, no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just it's an unrelatable circumstance. The way I
Mm-hmm.
understand it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. So you got his manuscript and you had it for a while. Did you have to edit it or anything, or did you publish it as is? What was your journey with the book?
So when I moved to Arizona, I contacted Jones Media Publishing out of Phoenix, and so they took the book in, helped me come up with the cover. Um, I I did most of the editing on the book,
Okay.
so um, so I've read the book probably about 100 times in the past, like since July.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a very interesting. When he first started writing this book, it was with a typewriter where it was electric typewriter where you type everything and then you hit the button and it puts everything out on the paper.
Oh my
So
gosh.
right, and then then it got into Microsoft Word or 95 and those applications that are way uh,
Oh,
less than what are today.
yes. Yes, crazy.
Yes, very crazy.
So when did he start writing it then? In the
He
80s,
was
the 90s?
no 90s. He was approximately 42 when he started writing his first story.
Mhm.
As he was going through, as the memories were coming up because of the PTSD counseling, it was
Mhm.
advised to him to just start writing it down. So
Yeah,
the traumatic experiences.
get it out. Is there a story in the book that sticks in your mind? I don't want to say favorite because war, it's hard to say of a favorite story about something so horrific, but something that sticks in your mind.
The first chapter with it's called A Gift from My Dad, and even the second chapter, A Gift from Grandpa, which are two stories. His dad taught him how to get over his buck fever to be able to handle a gun, and
Hmm.
his grandfather taught him the toughness
Hmm.
that he equated to when he was over in Vietnam.
Hmm.
So those are first two chapters of the two that are my
Yeah.
ones I like the most.
Uh-huh.
If you're gonna pick one,
Yeah. So
yes.
the toughness, is that like facing your fears and getting up and doing it even when you don't want to, that kind of stuff?
So in the story, his grandfather, out of all of his cousins, picked him to go up to he was working on his farm and to go up to another farm where he had more cows to go up and brand the cows.
Hmm.
And then my dad was about, if I remember correctly, he was about 9 years old. And then afterwards, him and his grandpa were going to go fishing. And on that way to fishing, Grandpa had this spot that he knew that was just going to be loaded with fish. And so he starts running. My dad's running. They're going over the side of the mountains. They're climbing up the sides. They're, just working their way to the fish. And when it was all said and done, to make a long story short, when it was all said and done, his grandpa looked at him and says, "You're going to make it because you're tough."
Yeah,
So,
and it's little things like that that really stick in your mind, and they become part of who you believe that you are. It's part of the stories that you tell yourself. Yeah, so many of us are trying to get over negative stories that we might have heard about ourselves when we were kids, and or ways that we interpreted feedback that we got. And it's just so nice to have something that you remember that's so positive, someone that you admire telling you something really good about yourself. So what a nice gift for him.
Definitely. Definitely was
Yeah,
a very nice gift.
cool. Well, we're gonna wrap it up real soon. Is there anything in particular that you want to tell us about the book that you haven't yet?
The book is just based off of his journey through PTSD. One chapter doesn't lead into the other. They're each sections in his mind. So it's a collection of stories that he was writing that he put in book format, in a rough format. And then the publishing company helped me to put them into the format that it is today on Amazon.
Very good. So not a story as much as a collection of stories.
Correct.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, as you've heard from other vets, even younger vets, I believe that these stories have been helpful for them in knowing that they're not alone and that there's someone out there that has similar experiences. I think I can only imagine because I don't know. I would think being a combat vet would be kind of a lonely place sometimes when you're dealing with your memories and all of that kind of stuff. And um, when you're at war, there's a whole bunch of people that share them with you. And then when you're not, they're scattered everywhere. So, yeah, bravo for getting it out there and for leaving a legacy for your father, Stephen Manthey. Um, for other people to learn from and a book for them to read. So, Brian, thank you for being on. Everybody, I will post the link to Brian and Stephen's book, Vietnam: Its Impact on My World. I'll put it in the comments on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube where you can find this recording. And Brian, I thank you so much for agreeing to come on and be interviewed about the book.
Thank you for having me on. I greatly appreciate you for this and to be able to talk about my father's book. So thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And everybody, we will be back to Defying Expectations Over 60 next week. Remember, we're on Tuesdays at 11 Pacific time, and we'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you.